pride, one love, okay? Thanks for tuning in to us, the MNM Show.
MNM.
MNM.
Show.
And welcome back to another episode of the MNM Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are here live at the One Love Massive headquarters in historic downtown Shaw, Washington, D.C. I am the N in MNM, and I'm here today again with the one, the only, the fabulous,
The real J. Mills.
with a little pout on it today.
2 cameras. Let me log off. Shout out to all the social media people that follow me all over everything. You know, shout out to everybody that's logged on right now. What up, T. Lucas? Cannon Woods in the building. We're going to shout them out more again later. But you know what it is. It's the MNM Show. It's your girl, the real J. Mills. What up, homie?
How y'all doing this evening?
Welcome to our guest, to our folks watching the show tonight. We have a very special guest, Ms. Jessica Wynter Martin. Boop, 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 pew, pew, pew.
Representing the people.
Wow.
Glad to be here this evening. I really appreciate you for inviting me on the show this evening. I'm really glad to be here and help clear some of the air about what's going on in our beautiful, charming, and lovely Chocolate City.
Yes, we're excited. So stay tuned, folks, for the show because you may have been seeing on Facebook and community forum meetings here in Washington, D.C., something about Initiative 77, or you may have been seeing something about like the Save Our Tips campaign. So we're going to explain to you what's actually going on today and make sure you're prepared so you can vote appropriately and accordingly on June 19th in the D.C. primary. So yeah, we're going to get to that. But before we get into the heart of the discussion and learn more about Jessica, I just want to first shout out Molly Ruland, our other co-host. Thank you again for having us in your awesome, amazing space. And for those of you who are watching who are like, where's Molly? I miss her. Know that she's all right. She is in the building. She's doing important boss business things right now, and she'll be popping in and out. And that's one thing. The other thing, we like to start off our show with our regular ritual, which is, how the hell are we all doing? What is going on in your life? What are you thinking about? So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Jessica. How are you today?
I am quite well. This past few days have been quite some interesting energy coming out with the work I'm doing here on this campaign and just everything in life. But overall, I'm just staying blessed. And I was reminded of a really powerful phrase I want to quote to you all just to get us all in a good mood. That I give myself permission to be prosperous, powerful, and at peace.
Amen.
Yes. And it feels really authentic when you say it in that red scarf also. You've got a vibe, yes.
Vibrancy. We all got a bit of red on today, though. I love it. We all got a nice vibe. Vibrancy vibe.
It is. Well, thanks for being here again and
thank you for having me.
Bringing that powerful wisdom nugget to us to start off the show. That great quote. Say it again.
I give myself permission to be prosperous, to be powerful, and to be at peace.
Amen.
Prosperous, powerful, and at peace.
Indeed.
I think that's important for Black women to say.
Every day, all day, twice a day at least.
Yes.
Once in the morning, when you wake up and set your intentions. Once in the evening, as you reflect on the end of that day. And you set that little energy for the night so you can meditate on it while you sleep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a similar practice, if you will. I have a commitment that I say to myself when I feel myself getting anxiety or like hung up, you know, in the anxiety space, which I often do. There's a lot to worry about and stress about as a Washingtonian and as an American in general. And so I always tell myself that I am a commitment to leading my life from a center of love, trust, patience, and faith. And so that might mean different things to different people, but for me, you know, it means just like loving myself and projecting love to other people, which sometimes doesn't always go according to plan, but I try. trust doesn't necessarily mean like trust everyone I come across with. It means just rather like trust the process, trust that whatever I'm going through, I'm going to learn something from it, you know? And to also give people that I work with and love the benefit of the doubt, you know? We've been through so much in our lifetimes. We put up shields and defenses and walls, you know? So I try to still be trusting of human beings and of life in general. And patience, you know? Because we live in a society where everything is like now and insta this and like, you know, buy it, get your instant gratification. But not everything comes that way. You got to be patient to create change, to build love, to build family and all that. So I try to remind myself to be patient. And then faith is just, you know, like faith in myself, faith in humanity, faith that somebody is looking out from above and there's something more powerful guiding us, but it can mean different things to different people. So, you know, I like having mantras and commitments, quotes that we meditate on, you know, to keep it positive and keep us going. Wisdom nuggets.
Yeah.
Jay Mills.
Yo.
What's going on in your world? How have you been this past week?
Oh, I've been pretty good. It's been, you know, an interesting week full of many cool topics that just got the people engaged. It was provocative. It got the people going.
What?
You know, we felt so many feelings.
What?
And
With the people?
you know, this week I learned something amazing.
What'd you learn?
I have to say first that I'm a bit of a geek. You know, I love math. I do a lot of math. I love counting money. I be counting numbers and stuff. I feel like I'm very smart. I ask a lot of questions and I don't generally take things at face value, but all my life I heard. And this should have been the first warning here because I've been alive for several decades, but the 400 years number never changed. But then I never thought about it because it was just like, well, they said we were slaves for 400 years. That's a long time. Makes sense, right? But, you know, I knew that Jamestown was founded in 1619 and then it was washed away. But I also know that when they came in 1619, they came with some precious cargo. Those cargo were Negro. So basically, 1619, they started off with some captive cargo. And next year, it will be 2019. So here it is, 399 years later, I realize we haven't hit 400 years yet. But they did. I don't know. That's just been like, you know.
So first of all, Kanye,
Wow.
get your facts straight. Get your facts straight.
Well, it's
first
not
of
just
all.
Kanye.
But hold on, let's take on to that though, because to be fair, Christopher Columbus brought his first round.
In 1492, he sailed the ocean blue.
But 1493 was when he came back to Jamaica with his first load of cargo.
Right.
So that was July 7th
Yes.
of 1493
Yes.
specifically. So we're actually almost hitting on 525 years.
And actually,
So get your facts straight, Kanye.
in
Get your facts straight.
1441,
Getting deeper. This rabbit hole keeps
there
going.
was a group from Portugal who shipped 12 Negroes to Brazil. For almost 200 years, the Portuguese held an essentially quite the monopoly on what they called it wasn't quite the slave trade as we know it now. There was a migration from indentured servitude to the chattel slavery that we, you know, associate with today. But a lot of learning, a lot of diving back into history and realizing what I knew, what I didn't know, certain facts, certain language, certain ideas that I've always had, but you know, many conversations were brought up this week, and I'm just so happy that they're talked about. So many different ideas and things, man. What a time to be alive.
What a time to be
Are we
alive.
going to talk about them? Can we talk about them? Are people talking about them in the room? Who's here?
Are we talking about?
Hey, Melanie. Hey, Afra.
Are we talking about Kanye's comments? Or are we talking about other things that have transpired?
Duff. What up?
I mean, this is America.
I mean, yeah, I was like,
Can I start with Kanye since you want to skip over him?
No,
so
we caught him
bad?
slipping,
I
though.
do want to skip over him real bad.
Don't
I
catch him
feel like
slipping,
She
though.
does. She wants to skip over him
I
so
do.
bad.
Did you see that last SNL this past weekend where Childish Gambino was actually on and performed? And during the weekend update, Michael Che put up Kanye was like, psh, and just skipped over it. Like, that's how I feel right now, too.
So,
But what do you got to say about Kanye?
don't shoot the messenger. One. Two, we had a choice. Now, becoming a slave was not a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Things happen to you, and they're not your choice. People take the power of your choice away. At times, this happens. Now, after that, your choice to remain a victim, your choice to be fearful, however valid it may be, is a choice. Now, I'm not sure. In fact, I'm fairly positive from the way that Kanye framed his conversation that he was not as informed on how many of us made the choice to fight. And I think that it is tragic that most African Americans have been given a perspective that we did not fight, that we were terrified. And this is why it lasted, because we can list all the horrible things that they did and all the psychological warfare that we suffered under that made many people afraid to run away. When instead, you could be told the story of how hard it was to keep us enslaved, how we never stopped fighting, how we ground up glass and we poison these people, how we kill their babies, how we kill ourselves, how even with seeing somebody's foot get chopped off and this man ripped from limb to limb and this person's baby soul, still somebody said, fuck this shit, I'm out. We should reframe the way that we are told this story, the way we tell this story, because it took 400 years supposedly, but then again we say that and it didn't even take that long.
Right.
Like they tried and they was like, okay, nah, man, this shit, it just wouldn't work. The whole world rose up and over it. But if we do not stop and talk about it, if we reframe it now and look at the fact that, yo, people were not with that shit except for some slaves that wanted to stay slaves. If we cannot examine this mindset that would cause somebody in this horrible, like if we can't look at that then we really are having a problem looking at right now when you're talking about kids who are living in the ghetto, and we're still living in a world where the whole world is telling you if you're a person of color, you're a minority. That already means you're less than. All the definitions that they put on you and tell you that you are not that smart. If you are, you're an exception to the rule. Everything is set up for you to believe that you will never succeed, period. But that mindset, what is it about that mindset that given all of these lies, you still decide, nah, I'm going to excel. No, that is not what it means to be black. No, I'm going to, that mindset right there is necessary. We have to examine it. We have to look at it because, oh my gosh, how many people are always assumed. And also the fears. We have to look at the fears and talk about it, to talk through it so we can see on the other side of the fear. Know that in our DNA, there is a very valid fear that we have of doing great and coming together, because every single time we do, they kill us. Every single time we do, they will bomb our streets, burn our cities, shoot our leaders, or incarcerate them. Period. They shot Tupac. Like, try it. They'll shoot you. Our black leaders now with the Black Lives Matter and these random deaths and stuff. Oh my gosh. Like, we have every right to be fearful, but we got to talk about it. If you don't talk about it, if you leave it at, well, of course we're not doing that because of this, that, and the third. Of course, we have no choice. But that's not the story.
I think there's something valuable that we can look at other people's moves, other revolutions. For example, let's look at the revolution that happened in Cuba. Those revolutionaries were not afraid to die for their revolution. They suicide bombed, in fact, at times, to get things done. I'm not necessarily advocating that message or that method by any means, but there's an element of this fear-mongering concern and this fear that's encoded in our DNA. I think you bring up a good point. Now, maybe it wasn't 400 years ago, but about 300 years ago, we have that beginning story of Willie Lynch. And if you remember that Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave, an element that he brought into was when you're going to make, don't make a martyr out of someone, don't kill them, but take the biggest buck Negro and his wife, and especially pregnant wife and children. Put the women and the children in the front. Force them to watch as he beat this man to an inch of his life. And the reason being, and this is, it doesn't tend to your condition, right? is that in doing so, especially if she's pregnant, that the fear that goes through her spirit will go into that of the child. And then she will then raise her sons to be mentally weak, physically strong, and raise her daughters to be the men, to take over, to be the independent women, to be the mentally strong and the physically strong, because that's how you have to make it in the system of enslavement. And so that's what I think, an element of our specific Black American experience that makes us a little unique here, as far as why we have this mongering of fear. And even brings it to the issue of why I'm even here today. We have a lot of people who are terrified about doing something that will actually help them. And what we're talking about doing here, as far as Initiative 77, is a vestige of slavery. It comes from the very same system where the jobs of servers, bartenders, bellhops, people who did your nails, who do your shoes, who pick up your bags, push your wheelchairs in restaurants. These are all tipped positions that are all the positions that we used to do when we were forced into slavery and continue to do in the era of Jim Crow. And the belief that we don't deserve a wage, that we don't need a full wage, that our workers, that our owners of our businesses should be able to not pay us for our labor, and that we're going to get enough in tips, is built around this idea that I'm not going to pay these Negroes, I'm not going to pay these slaves to work for me. I'm not when the first minimum wage went through in 1938 at 25 cents an hour by FDR, the tip minimum wage was $0.00 an hour. And so we've come all the way up to a federal tipped wage of $2.13.
$2.13.
The tipped wage, right? Tipped wage in here in
if you can't
DC
afford
just went
to
up
tip,
to $3.33.
If you can't afford to tip, stay home.
If you can't afford to tip, stay home. But if you're owning a business and supposed to be a successful business person, and you can't afford to pay your workers a livable wage, then it sounds like there's something wrong with your business model. You need to take a look. I'm not saying you necessarily need to close. The last thing anybody wants is for any restaurant to close. But restaurants close now.
Yeah.
Without one fair wage.
There's some restaurants that be like, yeah, they need to close.
I don't know how they're still open.
Some businesses in general.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into it, I want to give folks more context, you know. There are a lot of people that certainly have worked in the restaurant industry as a tips position or a non-tip position or a management position. There's a lot of people that used to work in it, have left. There's people, you know, all these different perspectives. But in order for people to understand where we are coming from, I want to talk a little bit more about our experiences in the restaurant industry that have shaped why we're pushing for an increase in the tipped minimum wage. So, Jessica, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experience in the restaurant industry. When did you start working in the restaurant industry and where?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, technically, you could say I started in the womb, since my mother was a server, my father was a chef.
So it wasn't a choice for you.
I mean, I guess it really wasn't. It's how they met. You know, that's how they met. You know, good front of house, back of house love story. You know, sweet and cute as it sounds. And she was working on her feet until she was, I believe, at least past 7 months. That was a pretty hot summer. I'm a September birth, so she was pretty heavy into the summer. And she was like, apparently, it got too hot.
And so she was making $2.33.
I think actually, so she was working in New York City. And I think their wage might have been even a little, almost, if not the same, if not a little higher, actually.
Back in the 60s, 70s.
80s. I'm not quite that old. It's about the late 80s here. I'm a youngin' still. But, and so for my personal experience, you know, as far as paid, you know, when I was a child, my mom would have days off. When I had days off school, when my mother and father broke up, my mother was to raise me alone as a server. And I would hang out in the restaurants. And so when I first got my first kitchen experience, I was 5 years old, literally. You know, I mean, it wasn't forced for the sake of that restaurant. No one forced me to go back there. I was just, you know, I'm just bored walking around. You know how the kid is in the restaurant. So when I was 5 years old, like, well, fine, take an apron, help wash some dishes. All right, cool. If you really want to do stuff, clean basil, help us make pesto, clean the shrimp, clean the calamari. And so at age 5, it's when I first started in the back of house. You know, by the time I actually came up front and had a wage and actually did doing W-9 and was an official employee was when I was 15 years old. Started as a busser, became a host, then a food runner, then a server. I started in small town Alameda. It's in the Bay Area. Nobody really knows
I
about
love
it.
Alameda.
You know about
Little
Alameda.
Alameda Island.
Yep, then we got that shirt wearing the H is Alameda, right? So I started in Alameda at a very local restaurant just down the street from my high school. My mom also worked there, so it was pretty cool. When I wanted to cut class, I'd go have lunch with her because she was my mom, so she can't argue with my mom. But and then I started working in San Francisco. In San Francisco again, I was food running, mostly food running. Did a little hosting and serving in San Francisco. Then after years of being there, because I was there, I was making one fair wage. I got my paycheck. My wage was $11.05 an hour when I moved, plus tips, when I moved to this area, to DC.
So you're saying in California,
San Francisco, the entire California state.
if you work in the restaurant industry, regardless if you're front of the house or the back of the house, there's a minimum wage. There's no tipped minimum wage or sub minimum wage.
There's
it's
no
just
difference.
the minimum wage.
Just one minimum wage.
And it was $11 at the time,
In
or
San Francisco
in
in particular. Yeah,
Okay.
San Francisco at the time. Now it's things have changed as far as more wage increases have happened. At the time when I was working in San Francisco, it was actually the highest minimum wage in the country at $11.05 per hour. But that was just for the city county of San Francisco.
And so
Before I moved here to DC and then took a huge pay cut to $2.77 an hour.
So in California, you were working as a server. Well, you worked as many different positions,
Server,
but ultimately,
caterer, yes.
and you were making 11 something plus tips. Hey, Molly.
Hey, Molly.
And so were you able to like pay your rent, pay your phone bill, transportation? What was it like? Just
in Bay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did I pay my rent, which I of course did pay, I paid my rent, all of my bills myself, moved out of my own apartment on my own after college. It's actually one of the rare few people who graduated college. I had 3 little part-time jobs when I graduated college. So I was overemployed actually, and I had one half of a day off. But I paid all my bills. I even actually was able to pay off, with some help, admittedly, one of my student loans. I had a private student loan, paid it all the way off, made regular payments way advance. My monthly payment was about $200. I was paying $500 a month on my other student loan, my bigger one. Just should have knocked that thing down.
wow.
And had a savings. I went to Jamaica on my tip money, and went back, had fun. Went to Jamaica twice actually before I had my savings. And moved here.
Savings. Wait.
And that move cost about $3,000. And I still had money when I got here.
I just want to repeat this.
I had savings.
Because my life.
Student loans paid, rent paid, went to Jamaica twice, and had a savings.
Vacation.
Yep.
Quality, decent, like responsible
Bigger
ability to
apartment
pay.
than I have now.
And vacation and savings.
And savings.
Okay, so let me
And paid my student loans, guys. I was actually able to pay off
student
my loans.
loans. So let me tell you something. So I have been working in the restaurant industry here in Maryland or DC for my whole life. I also grew up in the industry. My grandmother had a bed and breakfast. So as a 5-6-year-old, I was also in the back of the house cooking, cleaning, preparing veg. So it was like our stories are very similar. So when I'm 15, I start working for real. Not as child labor legally in the restaurant industry, but I started off with I think it was $2.75 in Maryland, not $2.13. It was a little bit higher than the federal wage, $2.75, and then eventually moved to the district where it was $3.30, I think. But
when was that?
This was like 10 years ago, 13 years ago.
Well, the district minimum wage just went up to $3.33
So it was
last
like
year. It was $2.77.
Okay, so it's $2.77.
Yeah.
Okay, some inconsequential number. So basically, I moved here, was making nothing, and just living off of tips. And let me tell you something. I always struggled to pay my rent. I never went on vacation. I never had a. Where didn't I work? I worked at like every restaurant here in DC. In Maryland. When I was in high school, let's see, I worked at Applebee's. When I was in college, I worked at Franklin's on Route 1 in Hyattsville, plus Bentley's, which is a college bar, which is terrible.
All horrible choices.
Then when I moved to...
She was a teenager. Don't give her so
I know. I didn't know. Then when I moved to the district, this is when my struggles really began, because then I had to start paying DC rent and transportation costs. Let me see. My first restaurant job was at Mr. Henry's on Capitol Hill. That was the place where, and I love that restaurant. I love the people that worked there, but like that was the beginning of the downward spiral of so I was there. I worked at Rosa Mexicano as a server, then a manager.
Well, that should have been good.
Oh, you would think, but no. There's
What made it bad? Weren't the tips good?
It depends.
Right.
So there's all kinds of. So when you don't have a base wage, when you're like just really, because when you have a $277 paycheck and you work 20 to 40 hours per week, every single bit of that is going to cover your taxes or whatever.
And
like
you
get a paycheck that says this is not a paycheck, so you're solely relying on your tips.
And you owe money at the end of the year when it's time to do taxes.
Right. So
if you claimed them.
That's a yes.
Encourages lying to the IRS.
Yes.
You can't even afford to try and tell the truth. That was a new thing. I used to always tell, I'm not saying I never did.
They told us not to tell the truth in training. They were like, and press 0 for cash.
So that's okay. So that's getting into a whole other issue about enforcement and implementation but before we can talk about that, before we get there, I worked at a lot of different restaurants, fine dining and quick serve, casual quick serve. And honestly, I worked at Ruth Chris. I worked at a lot of different places. It didn't matter, honestly, whether it was a mom and pop place or like a fine dining corporate restaurant. Right. I still struggled at every single place to afford rent. And I definitely never had any health insurance, paid time off, never had any savings. It was just like living, not paycheck to paycheck, living day to day.
They didn't have an option for you to get it after a certain amount of time working with the company. Healthcare.
No.
So, and the crazy thing is,
not at any restaurant that I ever worked at in DC. I did know one restaurant where I actually was organizing workers many years later. They were given an option for healthcare, but the thing is, if they didn't work 30 hours per week, then the deal that they had brokered with this company was they didn't. They then weren't eligible to actually use it that week, like if they needed it. It was the weirdest thing, and this is the Capitol Grill. So anyway, no, I never had health insurance.
Not even at the Capitol Grill?
No.
They got that bread. There was a question asked about higher end versus lower end restaurants and this new change. Would it be for all restaurants, period?
We're talking about for Initiative 77?
That's a good question. So Initiative 77 actually affects all tipped workers.
Period.
Regardless of the establishment. And that's one of the reasons why when I started this discussion, tipped workers include a lot of different categories of work. Now, a vast majority of tipped workers are what we call waitresses and waiters. It also includes, there's also obviously your bartenders, technically your nail technician, taxi drivers, people who push the wheelchairs at airports are considered tipped workers. Obviously your bellhops, people who work at the hotels and the ground floor level who call the cabs for you. Those are all considered tipped positions. There's a multitude of positions that are considered tipped labor positions, that can get as little as $3.33 per hour, or the current tipped wage. So this will affect the high end and the low end restaurants. I'm guessing part of that question is obviously how will the lower end establishments be able to make up for that difference, or versus the high end? And the question there just really comes down to each individual establishment. Like any increase in costs, each individual establishment is going to have to look at how they manage their costs and how they're going to offset those costs. And there's a multitude of different ways. A lot of questions people often ask when they ask us over at Rock, well, what are they going to do? Well, give us a model? Give us a model. Please give us a model. The most common method is just raising the prices a little bit on the menu. Average about 25 cents total overall. Some items won't get raised. Some items might get raised $1 or $2. And businesses in general know that they're going to have to make adjustment over time. It's not going to be something that's going to maybe even out the first year, the second year. It depends. Each business is different. Some businesses can just absorb the cost because they have this kind of profit margins. I've seen some places that take certain items off the menu because maybe they're expensive to carry. The profit margin isn't as high. So we're just going to remove these 3 things, save money somewhere we don't even have to raise prices, or we'll just wait and see what we can do. So every business, what they're going to do and how they're going to handle this is going to be different. And what's good is that they have lead time. They know, now we know, this is being voted on now. Let's say we pass on June 19th. The council has to review it. Let's say they do their job, pass it as it is. The mayor passes it on. The Congress does their job and gives it its stamp, and it moves in. It doesn't. These actual increases don't go into effect until after the existing minimum wage increases, and the existing tip minimum wage increases will raise the tip minimum wage to $5 per hour in 2020. So in 2021 is the next increase from $5 to $6.50, and so on until 2026. So how this affects tipped workers, this particular piece of legislation doesn't begin to have an effect on the status quo until 2021, which is something I just want to make sure I clear the air here and get in consideration, because it's fear mongering.
And let's be clear also that this increase to the current increase with the tip to minimum wage up to $5 in 2020 is the first increase that DC restaurant workers have had in like 23 years.
Yes.
So really, restaurant employers have had over 25 years to figure out how to increase wages with the cost of living. But it's something that just hasn't been done, and that's weird because in most other industries, when the cost of living goes up, there are wage adjustments, right, even small incrementally.
So, speaking of wage adjustments, I called my supervisors out on this one day at work because I was reading the fine print about tipped workers, and it said that your tips need to equal at least what minimum wage would be.
Correct.
Or else your workplace
makes up the difference.
Yes.
Supposedly.
Right. I think so. With that in mind, do you think that this may be an issue of people not being aware of their rights? Definitely. And not exercising their rights as employees, right, as tip workers, to call on that difference? I mean, for me, my background in working in the industry, I worked as a waitress at Red Lobster, and then I worked at Phillips. Very interesting demographics that come to those two restaurants. Different types of structure in terms of how it was, but both were very corporate in how they were run. Shout outs to the Darden Group for Red Lobster.
So I started a campaign in DC against the Darden Corporation. Yeah, it was like the first national campaign against corporate restaurants.
It's like the history
in
of
history.
Rock
This is crazy. So I guess I'm having a different perspective because as an employee, like that's how I found out about my right as a worker.
Okay. Well, we're not saying every Red Lobster is bad or anything like that.
After 6 months, we got full benefits. They were supportive of me going to school.
I'm happy you had a good experience.
People like
we're happy you had a great experience.
And it was put out like, this is what it is. You're part of the Darden family.
Wait, when was this? Because there have been changes. Yeah.
This was in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005.
I'm wondering.
That's actually before. That's before Rock even really. Well,
that's before Rock. No, it wasn't. That Rock New York existed, but I think that was before Darden merged with the Capitol Grill group.
So there was a corporate merger. They definitely weren't then.
There was a corporate merger where the benefits packages changed and the overall culture of the company changed.
Oh, that's so sad.
But I want to hear more about your experience when it was a good experience.
Sounds like a good time.
Like this is
the way back when.
Because this is what some of the workers who had who were involved in our campaign, they talked about how things were different prior to the merger and how they wish things would go back to the way they used to be. But then they started taking away those benefits, reduced and doing other things in the workplace that prevented workers from talking to each other, collaborating with each other, working
anti-union efforts.
Yeah, all kind of things like that.
Well, I want to get to one of the points that you brought up earlier, though, Jay. And it kind of was brought up about.
We got a lot of activity.
I'm sure.
Room.
People want to talk about
the people are talking about this.
But you know,
share the link.
One of the elements as far as about the enforcement element too. You know, there is an element like is it that people just don't know that they're rights, right?
Yeah.
But a big part of it is how do you do this math?
Because it is a tricky math because it's within your pay period. It's not within a day.
Exactly.
So you have to wait until the end of that 2 weeks. And if within that 2 week period you didn't make enough money, then and it's not even at that point.
It might be, and the thing is, we know how the industry works. We've all been in the industry, so we know that Monday lunch, bum. So unless you work in a lunch side of town, like if you work on this side of town in Shaw,
you might make $15,
$20. The biggest problem that happens with that, honestly, is cuts. But that's why they do that. When they see that they're not going to make enough, they try to cut you in advance, and that's fucked up.
I used to work at Tortilla Coast. It used to be right around the corner. We're talking about restaurants that have closed, and there's a big fear that restaurants are going to close because of one fair wage. Listen, Tortilla Coast was right around the corner from here. It was on 15th and P. It had a great, beautiful patio, great food, amazing guac we made to order. Never used a bottle mix, and they still closed down without one fair wage. So restaurants open and close, it happens. Restaurants are an extremely volatile industry. But that example, right? So I was just working right around the corner from here, and I used to have to work lunches there. A day shift at lunch, you're looking at you by yourself, no busser, no food runner, no one but you in the whole restaurant and one bartender. And
sounds like you about to get all them tips.
But what tips? Who is coming to get lunch over there on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? No one, even on Friday. So you work the lunch shifts during the week, you make nothing. Your weeknight shifts, you might make a few dollars. And then they'd have way too much of us on because we only work $3 an hour. There even be a 2-hour gap where the first dishwasher would end their shift at 4 o'clock, but the second dishwasher would start till 6. So between 4 and 6, there was no dishwasher. And we needed dishes. The kitchen's not going to wash the dishes. So they well, why don't you wash the dishes? You want your food, right? You go wash dishes. So now the restaurant got a $2.77 an hour dishwasher. But my point here is that, you work 1 or 2 shifts or maybe even 3 shifts in a week, and you're barely making money. But your 4th or your 5th shift, your Friday, Saturday night, now you made $200. Now you made $300. So now over your pay period, you may have gotten minimum wage over the week. But it doesn't make up for the 3 or 4 shifts you worked earlier that week where you made nothing, spent your time, spent your money coming to work, maybe even dipping into your savings at this point, because if you're only making $15 there, but it costs you $15 after you go there, park if you have a car, go back, eat your meal. You know what I mean?
I think the issue overall, as one can pretend argue on both sides, finishing my thing about working at Red Lobster, sometimes I got no tip at all. Sometimes I got extra blessed. Because of the price of the meal, generally I was going to make a nice amount. So it kind of taught me that, like, if I'm going to be a waitress, I'm only going to work in a restaurant that's going to have an average price of a certain amount so that I know that I'll be able to make a certain amount of money.
Right.
I really feel for people who are doing the same amount of work, but they're working at a lower end place, so they're not able to make as much in tips, or maybe the people who come aren't even used to tipping like that. Right. But Red Lobster being as it is in this area, and a lot of people who are saving up everything to try and go out there, and they don't have enough money to tip. They didn't factor in the gratuity. They barely covered the tax. They don't even understand tipping. It's the bill is $400. They give you a $5 tip, not understanding that you also got to tip out.
You got to pay for that table.
You may even have to pay to work. So
literally,
when the question comes up, when somebody says that, oh, it's going to bankrupt me to pay somebody minimum wage, you're going to tear, it's just so horrible for the restaurant industry. Again, I said this before and I'll say it again now. If you must pay people slave wages in order to stay in business, you don't deserve a business. You need to reevaluate your idea of a business if you are still relying on essentially slave wages. That's what this is. We can't tap dance around it. It's not being political. It's not being sensational. It's facts. It's historically backed. Flat out. It's inhumane. My second story, working at Phillips, the buffet, when I first started there was $28.99 a person, then went up to $32.99 if you were a party or 6 or more, gratuities included. However, if you were a party under 6, there's no gratuity. This is a buffet. Even though the price is high, because it's a buffet, people really didn't feel like, they needed to tip their server. Where at Red Lobster, we had food runners. We had a lot of back support staff. Working at a buffet was like crazy harder in terms of us had all the pre-bussing and all the other things that you had to do, and people just coming, you having to clear the amount of the table work that you had to do, the side work that we had to do, all the silverware that people went through, all the dishes and all the different stuff. It was a lot of work, and again,
physically demanding.
It was extremely seasonal also, because we were down there with the tourist season. So when the season was great, the money was fantastic. Right. But when it was cold, when it was the winter, there was an entire season where, you're just not making any money. And the servers, the only people who are not making money. The greeters are making money. Right. The kitchen is making money. Right. Everybody except for you, and you're the one who's actually selling the fucking product.
But here's the thing that comes into that.
It's crazy. And then they tell you, oh, well, you don't have to do this. You chose to go somewhere else.
Serving is a choice. Well, and another thing, what comes to that as well, and it's a real issue here as far as how people review this issue, and why I just wonder I get so much resistance is, you can put up, well, what if it's enforcement? And the question was asked, like, if enforcement was 100%, everybody did get made up that difference, would you still support one fair wage? Yes, I would. Because as you mentioned, you're pre-bussing for the owner of that establishment. You're rolling their silverware. You're doing things for the business that you represent. It's not like being a realtor, which you're out selling yourself. You're saying, hey, I'm just, let me get to know you. Trust me to sell you a house. So that's that, and you're making thousands of dollars commission on your sales. As a server, you're representing the establishment. People decide, do I want to go to Phillips? They don't say, do I want to sit in J section? They say that when they get there. Mm-hmm. And maybe because you were such a wonderful server, they'd be like, I know Jay works at Phillips, so I want to go so I can sit in her section. Mm-hmm. But their thought is, I want to go to Ruth's Chris. I want to go to Red Lobster. I want to go to the establishment. And I hope this person's there. Mm-hmm. If they're not, you usually will still dine. Right? Yeah. But it's like, if you want to buy a house, you're going to that realtor. You don't say, I want to buy from Remax. I want to buy from such and such realtor. You say, I trust this realtor. I don't care who they work for. I like this person. And so you're working for the company. And this is the only industry, or these tipped wage industries are the only ones in which the company somehow is absolved from paying for their own workers to be here. And we know, especially working in fine dining establishments. I worked in fine dining, and even here, when I worked here, I used to work for a place called La Mange Bistro Français. I'm not afraid to mention their name. Because it was muy français. It was muy français.
Oui. L'argent, beaucoup de l'argent, c'est plus cher.
And we got an actual, maybe it's like 2 weeks of training. We had an actual quiz that reminded me of college finals. 50 questions, a packet. What are the grapes grown in Burgundy? Yes. What are the grapes in Champagne? Yes. What's the difference between sparkling wine and champagne? What would you pair this dish with that and that wine with this? What foods would you pair with this wine? What wines do you pair with these foods?
It's serious.
We had to do that for Phillips. And
you're working for the establishment. You're not working just for the customer. It's not like you're just doing a customer a favor. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When you're like I said, because it's been compared to before by the opposition. That it's fine, it's a commission job, just like being, like any other commission job, like it's sales. You're working sales. You certainly are selling, and you are trying to upsell. But we also know people who just come in, know what they want, you leave them alone, you let them be. But beginning
It's
middle,
hospitality.
it's hot. Exactly.
We got a
It's
question.
not-
We got a
Please go
question
ahead.
because it's getting spicy
I'm sure
in
it's
the
getting
boards.
hot on there.
All right,
There's
there's a mentioning of a name calling incident.
What's the question?
I would love to hear the
Uncle Tom.
What's the question? What's going on? You got to read it. What's going on?
Please go ahead. Because I remember the name that I said, and the name I said was nothing like an Uncle
What's
Tom.
going on?
Someone, it's Laura in the chat room, was saying that at the meeting that you called someone an Uncle Tom for being on the other side of this issue.
So what meeting is Laura referring to?
I
Thanks
feel
for your
like-
question, Laura.
So thank
Or
you, Laura.
comment.
So the meeting, if you want to call it that, though, I felt it was more like an afternoon in Rome Senate, if you will, for how we were treated in there. We were brought together to do a panel at Midlands yesterday around noon. Most people in the room were on the no side of this initiative.
They were from the Save Our Tips campaign.
You could call it that. Certainly, that's what they want to call it. And even though no one's threatening anyone's tips,
That's why I was like, I'm really confused about why it's framed this way.
it's framed in a way to be emotionally pulling, so that they can get workers on their side, because their belief is that workers are going to get upset, think you're trying to take tips away, and then that will use that to kill this. What they're really trying to do is go against the will of the voters.
But does the initiative call for a removal of tipping?
Nothing whatsoever. The
Okay.
initiative does three specific dimensions. It actually only has three sections. The first section went in because when this bill was passed, it was before the $15 an hour minimum wage bill had happened. So when we passed this initiative, so the first bill says it raises everybody's wages to $15 per hour by 2020, which has already happened because the bill passed after the initiative went through. The second segment mentions that for tipped workers, all tipped workers, their wage will be raised up to $15 per hour and then indexed by 2026.
Okay.
And then the third part just mentions that it doesn't affect DC employees or contractors.
So there's nothing that says
anything at
if
all.
we're increasing the
And if
minimum
you guys are
wage, tips
concerned,
go away.
the website is onefairwagedc.org. It's on there. You can see it says legislation and words. But I want to get to the question.
Yeah, what's
so
the
what
Uncle
happened
Tom situation?
So what happened at the
Right.
panel? There were three people on the opposition side. They had a brother, a young lady, and other gentlemen. And then there was three of us on a pro side, all women. My sister Diana, this is Diana Ramirez of Rock, who's right above the Florida Avenue Grill, a couple blocks away. She's actually there right now. She just dropped me off, grinding hard into the night, even though she's got babies of her own who are growing older. We had another woman there who currently is a tipped worker, and then I was there, who is a former tipped worker and being on the board. In the conversations we were discussing, and I'm saying conversation to be polite because there was nothing polite about. Well, we were being polite, but the other side wasn't really being polite, nor the people in the audience. But people were passionate. So in the conversation, it was brought up that we were here. What we were saying is that we are here as tipped workers, as people who've been and lived their entire lives on tips, because we believe in this. We wouldn't be here if what we were trying to do was going to hurt the industry. We wouldn't be here if what we're trying to do is going to hurt us. Mm-hmm. The only reason why I left the industry is because I had bills to pay and I wasn't paying my bills.
Me too.
And I'm blessed and very humble and appreciative and blessed that I had the ability to move on. But
if you lived in California, you might still be doing it.
I would be fine.
Luca, your comment. We're going to get to you in a second.
I was fine in California. I was quite happy. Everything was fine there. So that's why I was in California 10 years. Moved out, paid bills, paid loans. But I want to get to the point, to the comment. So when the comment came up, so when we mentioned that, we're here because we supported this. That's why we're here. And we're here to show that we as women of color, we support this. The brother on the other side says, well, I'm a black man and I'm here against that. So what does that have to say? And my response, and I'll quote myself as best as I can, is, well, on any issue, you always can find somebody who will vote against their self-interest. There are black people who voted against civil rights, and every time Malcolm X ever did a speech, there was always some black person who would come up and say, I don't see racism. That's the comment that I made. So the only name I mentioned was Malcolm X.
So you never actually called anyone an Uncle Tom?
I didn't say anyone's name except for Malcolm X.
Interesting.
The only names I said. So I would like to see. There were a lot of people on the side of the opposition who were taking video, who were filming it, live streaming it. So prove me wrong. You can find the video. Go ahead and get the video. Look at the clip.
That's cool.
Pull it up. No, I'm just putting it out. I'm putting it out there,
Yeah.
guys. Rock United.
Yeah.
You can email
Rock United.
You can email my people. You
Email.
can email. Actually, there's a gal named Jessica. So you can email Jessica@rockunited.org. When you find that clip, please send it to Jessica@rockunited.org or Diana@rockunited.org or Candace with the A @rockunited.org. Send it to them, and we will discuss it. Trust me when I say they will try and talk to me and hold me accountable. But they sat right next to me. They heard what I said.
Yeah.
And we know what I said. So
Yeah.
I challenge the notion. Now, if what I said to you all in the audience sounds as though that's what I was calling that person, then it sounds to me that in your minds that's what you believe that person was acting as,
That's what it
and
sounded
not
like to
what
me.
I actually said. So it sounds like the only person calling this gentleman, this brother, whose business I support, he's the brother who's coming out with these coasters. There's a new invention of coaster where you can pull off the top and put a cover on the drink.
Cute.
And it'll be tamper-proof to know that women don't get their drinks tampered, so you can go to the bathroom
'Cause I have
and
been
leave a
roofied
drink.
before.
And I actually was in support of his work. I think he had a crowdfunding campaign. I tried to fund it. So I actually went up to brother. I'm like, I admire what you're doing because date rape is a real issue. Women's getting drugs. So I support this brother. He's a gentleman. Maybe even in that moment he got heated, and I would forgive him for his passion because I appreciate passionate people, even if we don't agree, even if we can't always politely be polite about it. But I appreciate his passion. But if anybody is calling this brother that name, it wasn't me. It wasn't coming out my mouth, and it really speaks to the people who are supposedly on his side who keep calling him that.
Well, I
we
think
have another question.
yeah. We had Luca. Let me scroll up because it's been a lot. Luca
Thank you
and
to
Laura
everyone who's
were
participating.
at the forum, I'm assuming.
Okay.
And they have a lot to say.
I'm sure I can see that
They
from
said
here.
Luca. She said that it'll run DC restaurants out of business because they don't have the profit margins that people think that they have. I want to pause and just say that, we live in a really big
You guys are
world.
really dedicated workers.
We live in a really big world.
So hard for
It has
people
a
who
lot
replace
of restaurants in many different countries that have existed for a very, 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 very long time. And to think that the way that we have structured our system and when it comes to dining out
Is the only way.
Is
It's
very,
strange.
very small-minded. Furthermore, it would be as if
Don't quote
there
me
were
on
not
that one.
already states in this country
Do you know how many states in the
that
United States?
already
Seven
operate.
states.
have one fair wage.
One
and they
fair
have
wage.
many wonderful
The entire West
restaurants. Hello, California. I love your restaurants. They're fantastic.
And
In fact,
California
there's a
actually
lot of
has
restaurants in California.
A really robust,
Very
thriving
robust,
restaurant
thriving
industry.
Competes with each other.
restaurant
Different
scene.
cities compete with
Now,
each other to have
I'm
the
going
best
to close it
industry.
off by saying that I myself am a business owner. From my experience in this industry, I've gone on to be a restaurateur of my own sorts. And I pay my workers $20 an hour. I budget for it. I do that because I want my people to come to work. I want them to want to come to work. I want them to love the place they work. And I don't want them to feel that they have to get tipped in order to get paid for their job. I don't want them to feel like they have to look at the person that's going to be serving them and wonder if they'll actually be paid for their time. That is the way I choose to do business because I believe in the humanity of every person that works for me. I think that if as a business owner, you can reconcile yourself paying your bills in lieu of someone else being able to pay theirs for the same time, you got to reevaluate yourself, not them. Not even your business. You got to take a good look at your soul. Because I've been on both sides and I know what it's like to come to work. You paid money to work and didn't get paid. There's nothing right about that. Every time somebody starts talking about it, they start talking about the average worker. So you're only talking about the sum. We're talking about something that will protect the all. And it's already been shown that your tips are not going to move because the price does not have to change. What this will change is a culture of people calling in a whole slew of people that they don't even need, that just stand around for nothing because you can. Maybe you'll think about it. Maybe you'll figure it out. or you won't. But what won't happen is a continuation of people being worked to death, essentially.
You know what I want to add too, for the folks who are business owners or who are deeply concerned about profit margins in restaurants in DC. I get it too. Like, I have managed restaurants and I have tried to start my own business, and it is hard as fuck, okay, to manage folks, to manage your profit margins, to manage all of that stuff. It's really hard, and it's very expensive in DC to start a business. If you are looking at a property, for example, you know, a lot of these building owners have something called a triple net lease. They want you to pay the rent and the property taxes and the utilities. And in some cases, they're going to have you renovate the whole place and pay your rent so it's operational. Like, it's a lot, and it's not cheap here. And then there's like the taxes and all that. So I get that. But my thing is, like what Jay said, you have to take that into account. You have to budget and plan for things and what you prioritize.
Be a better business. Shout out to the California restaurant scene.
And
I'm going to call out mediocre restaurants in D.C. Step your cookies up. I mean, step your game up. Step your menu up. Because the competition is fierce.
Well, yes, you have to. Absolutely. But also, just like the restaurant workers are getting organized around Initiative 77, like, y'all as business owners are organized. You have a restaurant association.
Exactly.
Why don't y'all advocate to make rules so that there's less barriers to like your startup costs or your maintenance costs to doing business. Like, look at other creative ways to offset that profit margin. You know,
shout out to the food trucks, yo.
Even on that point, you know, the opposition has created this campaign called Save Our Tips to try to
sounds like a lie.
It is, but to try to
your
suggest
tips were never in danger. I think that for all of the employees that are many people are just not informed.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that throws us off over at Rock. You know, and when people ask, why don't you have more workers on your support? A lot of workers support us, but they're scared. They're scared they're going to get fired.
And they have to work 2 or 3 or 4 jobs to make ends meet because
a lot of the workers.
It's being said that we don't have a clear grasp of economics and the effect that these changes are going to have on the people who own businesses. Well, and again, like from the business owner perspective, I say, I call you on your bluff.
You'll like figure it out.
You really will.
About the economy.
Again, I pay my folks $20 an hour. Take that argument to somebody who doesn't care about the people that work for them, I guess.
Here's the thing. I've done a retail type of business, right? And so I can respect, you know, if I was saying a little earlier today, if I had a lemonade stand and my lemonade business was built upon me spending 10 cents per lemon, right? And then someone told me that the people who pick your lemons are actually like treated horribly. They only get paid $1 a day.
Oompa Loompas.
So now we have laws. We're gonna actually have to pay them a full wage. Now your lemons are gonna go from 10 cents to $1 each. I would be upset. And if I had legislation that I could fight, now definitely, as a human being, I don't want workers to be treated horribly. But that's a huge what? You went from 10 cents to $1. That would frighten me. So I can understand and completely respect why these business owners are upset or concerned. Well, it's interesting
is that big
to
of a
me.
markup if you were paying like $2.77.
Well, $3.33.
$3.33 to $15.
Change is hard.
But the thing is, they're going to go up to $5 per hour by 2020, and from between 2020 and 2026 is when it's going to go up from 5 to 15.
You got 8 years,
so you all got time. It's not as if we're trying to do this tomorrow. For one, but for two, and to get on this is economic element. I mean, again, I understand. But the one thing I want to bring up again about the Save This Tips campaign is that, like we discussed before, we essentially read off legislation. You can go to onefairwagedc.org, onefairwagedc.org, onefairwagedc.org to look at the letter of the law, what is being presented. You'll see the words tips aren't even in there except for tipped workers. But my question to all of these workers, these workers who are complaining and fighting this, where were you all? Some of you, and then a few I found of them there. But where were you all when the Department of Labor had presented some legislation that would have effectively taken away all tips from all workers everywhere in the nation and made them property of owners? That is something that was going on very quick, shady behind the scenes this past fall into this year. And the Restaurant Opportunity Center, Rock United, were the ones who did the entire campaign, state by state, nation by nation, to get the thousands upon thousands of comments to kill this.
Hold up.
That's what we were the ones fighting to save our tips. And here now we create this campaign and make it sound like we're trying to take tips away. That's the last thing we're trying to do is better wages, better tips. My tip average in San Francisco was 22%. My tip average here is 18%. And I have more experience, obviously, coming from having already worked 10 years in San Francisco when I moved here. So I had more experience, the same server, same skills, who's making 22% average over there is making 18% average
Plus
here.
An hourly wage of how much an hour?
$2.77 an hour here, but over there was $11.05.
Well,
So that's the thing you got to consider. Tips go up. We look at Alaska as an example, where the tip average there is actually 25%, and it's a very small, spread out state as far as population size goes. So and there's a lot of counter arguments and feelings. You say we don't understand economics, we do. What we do understand is that economics is that business owners don't want to pay more. Just like nobody who had a lemonade stand would want to go from 10 cents a lemon to $1. We get that. That is the economic thing here. But the idea that workers should have to rely upon the consumer, you're essentially pitting working class against working class by forcing people like us who go to restaurants to eat to against people who like us who've also worked at restaurants to pay the wages when there's no other industry ever where the customer is supposed to pay the worker on top of what they already pay for the product. There's no other product I buy.
The burden of the customer. I got to give a shout out to Afra because I've been reading a lot of comments that are kind of contrary to what
Afra
we're saying.
sings, y'all.
And she's been representing
Afra sings.
in the comments section so deep that I didn't read it aloud because I mean,
Opera sings.
You're doing it, man.
She
Opera's
sings when
dope
she
as hell.
types.
But at the same time, I'm all about discussion and debate. I'm all about intellectual discussion and debate. I want to give a shout out to Laura, Luca, and anybody else who is chiming in to share
bring
more
facts.
information about
I would love
how
to hear
you feel
facts.
about it. I mean,
I'd love to hear some
one
facts,
thing that
though.
I think that we need more of is the ability to, keep it classy, have a debate. Whether the facts are there or not, no need to be condescending, dismissive, or whatever.
Or cussing people,
No
booing
need to be
at
cursing
them.
people. No need for all of that.
I find it interesting that they would bring up that one comment that I made that was controversial at that event. But
I mean,
I'd love it
it's
if you guys would share. Those of you who are going to
radically-
find the clip of what I said, please share the entire video. If you would be so brave, those of you who had those videos, please share the entire video unedited, so we could talk about who is being classy, who is being gracious, and who is being respectful during this debate.
I mean,
because I think that's something that needs to be brought up as well.
Many
In that
will
regard.
have their feelings, but how we respond is always up to us. So
I just want to say, I think that it's great. I'm really excited people are participating, whatever side you're on. We need to talk about things. We need to discuss what's important, and then you need to exercise your right to vote about it. And
everyone can vote, even though it's
Yes.
a closed primary, regardless of your party, of your affiliation, whether you're registered as one of them. But if you're registered anything, if you're not a Democrat,
I don't understand.
Any party or nonpartisan.
With
Are they-
that, I
Can I
want
ask a question?
I want to remind people, take this opportunity to plug and remind people to vote here
Vote.
in DC
Yes,
on June 19th.
Whichever side
Juneteenth.
you're on, you
that's
show
the
up
day
and you
of our
vote,
freedom.
man.
We
June
vote
19th.
for our freedom from the
Vote yes on
enslavement of
77.
the tips. The
June
enslavement
19th.
of the tipped wage. We have to vote Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
Freedom of our enslavement on this tipped wage, because it comes from vestige of slavery. And that was another thing that I said that people were very offended by. Like two things that I said that were very offensive. The first
They were offended by history.
apparently they were offended by the history of a tipped wage. They brought up a quote in which Saru, J.R. Rahman had mentioned that the tipping culture on a whole is toxic, needs to end. So you try and take away tips. And it's like, well, the legislation doesn't do that. What Saru was mentioning was the tipped wage culture comes from a vestige of slavery. And that culture is itself toxic in the sense that you have to tip to pay for someone's wages. That element of that. If I go, I'll be fair, when I get my nails done, I pay the full wage and I tip. because to me it's customary. But I'm hoping and anticipating and expecting that they're getting the full minimum wage, or at least, or more.
Yeah, I've never thought about how much the nail techs make. And you
they're
know,
considered
I do want to
workers.
speak because on the other side of the Phillips game, when we got that gratuity,
Right.
I was paid. I paid bills from being a waitress.
Right.
But, you know,
And that's
I was
great.
blessed to work in a high-end restaurant. I think that any server that sits on their high horse, any bartender, any person who sits and talks about themselves is a part of the problem, because it's not about you. It's about all. We're going to make this real simple, okay? Because it's about all. I don't care about you and how many bills you made and how much money you got. I get it. I got it too. I'm talking about the people that work at Denny's. I'm talking about the people that work at Bennigan's. I'm talking about the folks that work at IHOP. I'm talking about somebody at Golden Corral. I'm talking about these people who are not making this kind of money and are still doing this kind of work, and they deserve more. Please stop, because the people who eat at these type of restaurants that are giving you this living wage to let you live like that, they're going to continue to tip. And the price margin that you have that you're thinking of is still good. It's still fine.
The thing too that I have to say is that you could still work at a fine dining restaurant and still be homeless and still be impoverished. And this happened to me. And this is when I work at Ruth Chris. And when I finally made it to Ruth Chris, I was like, yes, I've made it. Like, I'm in the fine dining restaurant. It's $40 a steak here, $10 a side. Like, it's $10 just for one per tip, you know, to eat. I was like, I made it. But no, there is racial segregation within that restaurant and a hierarchy. So I didn't get any good sections or the good nights to work. You have to work your way up for that. And then on top of that, because that restaurant, for example, is a corporate one and they're able to rely on their network of like national profits in order to sustain each other, the managers at that particular restaurant weren't interested in figuring out like strategies how to get more business in there. So again, I would be scheduled for 4 or 5 shifts and I'd be cut at the very last minute. Don't come in today. Don't come in today. So I'd only work 2 days a week. And you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like
they didn't care.
No. It didn't matter. So
There's
I
no
still
guarantee.
wasn't able to make
meet.
ends meet. And I was I was the only black person that worked in that restaurant as well.
In the Chocolate City.
Yes.
And this is back when it was even more chocolatey.
Yes.
I mean, again,
and so it's a racial equity issue as well. It's a gender equity issue as well. Women make up the majority of the front of the house positions across this country, and a lot of immigrants and people of color employ these positions, and poor white folks too. And it's just like, no matter if you're in a high-end or a low-end restaurant, there are a plethora of challenges that prevent people from actually making a living wage and being able to sustain themselves. So, you know, it's enough.
You know, again, this narrative. You know, been dealing with some ladies yesterday who came up afterwards to talk to me. They say, you know, you want me to vote for this, and I'm going to take a pay cut. How? They're going to take away my tips. How? They're going to make a service charge.
People from choosing to tip when that's something that they already do worldwide. There's so many restaurants where people are like, no, you don't need to tip, and they tip anyway. And there are other places where like, ma'am, you should tip, and they're like, I ain't got it.
Right.
The people who tip will tip. The people who won't. But at least now you'll definitely get paid. Like, you get more money. But I don't understand. How are you arguing against like the same values and guarantees that everybody else that works in a job in America get? If you are sitting up here like, we don't need this, then you're saying that you don't need like, money. Family.
So just
you don't
give
need,
it back. If you really don't need the money, then give that money back. You don't need
medical care. Really? You don't deserve dental care? Your children don't? I can understand you balling out, but don't your baby need their teeth cleaned? Don't you need your eyes checked? Do you not understand that this is what you are due as a citizen of this country? You think it's a privilege? You think it's cool that you make enough money in your tips that you can afford to? You don't know that you deserve that? I don't understand what is happening in the minds. Again, like, I've worked this, I made this bread, I'm aware of what it is, and I know that because of who I am, I'm going to get the tips regardless.
Exactly.
If you're good at what you do, you'll get the tips regardless.
Exactly.
You will. I know hostesses that get
Well-
tipped. I know chefs that get tipped. I've sent money back, like, who made this? Give this to him. If you're good, it's what happens
But
because
you
it's
can
America.
also give the best service and not get tipped.
Exactly.
There's no guarantee with a tip, which
And
is
that's
why
the point.
having a base wage is so important.
Agreed.
You're having to do this math. This idea, they're going to make up the difference. They're supposed to make up the difference. It's the law. It's the law. Well, we can look in
That
D.C.
shit
and say
doesn't
that.
happen.
Thank you. And there's a lot of laws that are on the books that don't get enforced. And if they do get enforced, it's not the point. The point here is that you're working for an establishment, you're representing this organization, you're representing this business. This is the only industry where the business doesn't have to pay their worker. And this idea, again, it's just, the question is, the opposition is strong. They know what they're doing. They fought us a while. They're not the first time they fought this organization. That's why they come
Won't
in.
be the last time.
And that's why they come in with this. Well, they're coming from out of Newark, New York. They're from out of town. Listen, we have been at the Florida Avenue Grill, a D.C. institution, for quite some time. If you haven't heard of us, it's because probably the owner of the restaurant kicks us out the moment we try and walk in, even if we're trying to buy lunch. And some of our staff members can't even buy meals in some places because they're like, you work for them, get out.
So,
I'm just trying to buy something.
What's up with this talk? Why would somebody be against a union where a union is a protective organization to protect the rights
We're not
that's
a union.
employees
That's
of
a
an
whole
industry?
nother discussion.
That's a whole other
How is
discussion.
that a bad? Because every time
don't
employees
understand.
threaten to stand up for their rights, it's always demonized.
You know what? Let's
a
have
union.
that
It's quite
discussion.
historical.
Let's have the discussion next week. I'll get someone from a union.
to talk
Yeah.
Here,
about.
Because
to
I
come
think
and
that's
talk
one
about
thing I
that.
wanted to be clear is that Restaurant Opportunity Center United we
Is
see that
not a union.
We do say united because we're talking about how we're in different states, in different areas, and we're all together united.
Yeah.
So there's Rock DC, Rock LA, Rock the Bay, Rock New York. United is the organization.
I remember
but we
how-
are not a union. We do help workers, but we also work with restaurant owners. We work with diners. We have 3 different organizations we do with. We have Raise, or the High Road, for the employers, where we have quite a few employers. I mean, over 1,100 the last I looked, if not more, because it's constantly growing. We have employers who are part of our work, who actually have also moved to one fair wage, where they're the only ones who've moved to one fair wage, where no one else next to them have done it. And they've made these transitions.
And
that's how we can support.
They figured out how to do paid sick days and,
And
offer
paid-
sustainably.
Whoa.
Like a
Whoa, now.
You
Oh my
know.
God.
Is it 1918 or is it 2018?
Yeah.
Because we're having all these talks about workers' rights making me scared.
Can I
know.
give a shout out to Joseph Robert Basila? Do you know who that is? Joseph
perhaps.
Basila. He's definitely speaking out in the group.
Thank
we
you,
have
sir.
again quite the chat room going on.
I can
Again,
see
shout
that.
outs to everybody who's talking. However you feel about it, make sure that you show up on June 19th
And vote about it.
Only 2 to 4% of DC's population actually votes in local elections. So it is very important for you to turn up. Because as I said that number, you probably thought to yourself, have I voted? Ever?
You better vote.
In
At a
June?
primary?
Right.
Did I vote at primary?
Right. Do you even vote? Most people vote when it's time for the president. They don't even know about the primary election.
So
We
much
try.
more is at stake.
School
June
is already
19th.
out.
June
You just
19th.
have no reason to know when it is.
But it's Juneteenth, y'all. It's freedom from this and some of the slavery system. Think about it that way. We are emancipating ourselves this time from this vestige of slavery. And, it's a lot. I know it's a lot of I can't really read the comments, but I'm certain it's just constant back and forth.
You
You don't
want to?
understand. I really don't.
You
Like, I
shouldn't.
heard
I
them
didn't
all.
give it to
They
you
were being
because-
shouted and screamed at me yesterday.
Yeah.
So I got ideas of what the people are saying.
We're very nicely framing.
I'm sure they're being very nice and gracious and respectful and
I
polite because
know.
it's in writing and we can just scroll past.
I love you guys. I think, and they appreciate the moderation. I think.
But
I
you
hope
can
so.
you can scribble
You appreciate it,
furiously
Laura,
on your
Luca,
ballot.
Jennifer, who else?
Get it all out on your ballot.
I mean, the thing is,
Chevelle.
I
What's
honestly,
up?
it's interesting to the fact that the workers here are trying to fight for the owners. When I wonder, have the owners fought for you? I mean, maybe
Not
they
at
fought
all.
for you as a person because they like you. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why you were here. Again, because you mentioned privilege. Maybe you come from a privileged place where, and again, if we describe it the boss lottery, right? Sometimes we win the boss lottery and we get that great boss that loves us, that cares about us, that wants us to succeed, that hands us a little money. You know what I mean?
Sometimes.
But that's the lottery.
Sometimes.
And then there's all the rest of the people. But may the odds be ever in your
It
favor.
seems more like slavery to me.
It is.
It seems like slavery where you're
It's
in a
Hunger
great
Games
plantation.
2018.
You're in a great plantation. You're not even a great plantation. You just have a good position in the plantation.
You won the house.
You were in the house, man. You were eating good. You were dressing good. This slavery thing is working out for you. I don't know about everybody else out there in
y'all
the field.
in the field keep complaining. Maybe y'all just got y'all act together.
You know, you just work a little bit harder. Maybe you could make it in the house one day.
Master can't afford to be emancipating everybody.
Master can't be freeing everybody. Who's who gonna get all massive
and
food?
the whole plantation gonna close down. And nobody gonna have nowhere to work.
Get out of here. Get out of here. You hear yourselves? You see this? You know that's what's happening right now.
And that's
Do you
the
see
reason
where
why
you are? That you're like, oh, this is good, but it's still slavery. I don't care how much you get in tips, boo. I don't care how good of a bartender you are, how many bottles you bring, how much you bring home. I've been there, done that. Love a nice little $800, love $1,000 day. Cash. How much did I make in tips? It was cash. We're not going to talk about what happens to that. Shout outs to you for knowing what I'm talking about. I'm hip. Okay? I'm hip.
But here's the thing. Here's my question to all these workers here, because like you said, tips are not mandatory.
No.
But wages are.
Yep.
So what did we, I mean, I'm sure we've been there. What do we do when you get no tip? What do you do when you spend an hour and a half, 2 hours working on a table, working them over, being nice to them, being sweet? Maybe they came in mean because they were hungry, or just that's because who they are.
A little piece of you dies inside.
And then you get nothing.
You got to pay for that table, but
can you go get your tip? Can you go to the customer and say, "Hey, did I do something wrong? What can I do?
No.
What can I do to make up for this? Because your $200 check, I have to pay.
That's how I got
$16
fired from Phillips. I had a party of 8 who tipped me. I think their bill was like something 88. So essentially, I was tipped 12 cents.
Wow.
And I asked them. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was there something wrong? Did you guys want to talk to a manager?" And they were like, "No, girl, you was good." I was like, I mean, because you didn't tip, and I'm sorry, but you just didn't. You didn't seem like the type of people who don't tip. I thought that perhaps there was something wrong with your experience, and you were trying to communicate that with the lack of tip. But I see I was wrong.
That's not a hospitable way to approach something. But if you had a base wage,
you got fired.
About it. I got
you
fired.
got fired. But if you had a base wage where you knew, okay, at least the last 2 hours, I know I'm making $11 per hour,
or whatever it was at the time,
you'd be like, all right, they didn't tip me. That sucks, but I'm gonna keep it moving.
We good.
You know. Because I know that I can rely on my base wage that I get from my employer, like most people get from their employer.
Like every other job. Like when you go to McDonald's, CVS, any of those places, when you go to a McDonald's and you don't drop anything in the tip box.
You get at least what McDonald's workers are getting?
I mean, doesn't that upset anyone? I mean, I'm not to denigrate the McDonald's worker. But my point is that we often trout them out as if they're people who don't deserve anything, right?
They get a pregnancy leave. Come on, don't you want maternity leave?
How can you get sick leave if your hourly wage is only $3.30 an hour?
I don't care how much you're getting in tips. Don't you want benefits that come to you because you work as an American citizen?
That sounds like a really great
I don't understand.
Lyric. That was poetic.
I remember when they first was raising the minimum wage up to 15 and all the businesses. You know what business complained the most? Walmart.
Don't even get me started because I worked for years on the Walmart campaign.
Walmart's the one that complained. So, and then Walmart missed me with your complaints about this. And again, as a small business owner, missed me with talking about what you can and cannot afford to pay people and all these different things. As a former employee who made great tips miss me with saying I don't understand what it is to work there and how much money it can be made, because for all of the great nights and all of the good tips, you know as well as I do that there tends to be a slow season. And if you are blessed in a great restaurant that happens to not have these problems that so many of a majority of your colleagues are talking about, stop being so selfish. Open up your eyes and realize it's not about you. It's about everyone. The profit margins that you say that we got messed up can definitely be changed if you just take a closer look at how you are overworking and underpaying a majority of your staff. You got free labor for a long time, yo. All that side work we did when the restaurant ain't even open, and after the restaurant is closed, all those hours that we worked for free, you about to have to decide when that call time is. Maybe you gonna have to get out there and do some work with your restaurant owning self. Maybe you gonna roll a silverware. Maybe you gonna find a different thing to do to make it happen and make it work, so that you are not essentially a plantation owner and the people there are not slaves to this career that we supposedly chose to work in. That choice that, oh, well, you didn't have to be there. You ever had that when you think to complain about it? Well, nobody told you had to be a server.
Well, I mean, but that doesn't justify making it a terrible place to work. You know, doesn't justify making it, going out of your way to make it something that is not affordable. It's just that isn't. All of these arguments, I mean, they sound great. Again, honestly, when I open a restaurant, can people as passionate as you please come work for me? Because I would love it if the workers of my establishment went to toe this hard for me as the owner, profiting from their labor.
Chevelle said that her slow season is 4 months long.
So 4 months.
Yeah.
But imagine if during those 4 months you were able to at least get the 15, the third, right now it'll be $12.50, and it'll be $13.25 on July 1st. And July 1st, you're just gonna go from $3.33 to $3.89. Ooh. I mean, just imagine for a moment. The question I had too when you're looking at the DC tip minimum wage at $2.77, or even the federal tip minimum wage, which is still at $2.13 since 1991. Here's my question. What in 1991 was either $2 or $3 that is exactly the same size and quality that is still $2 or $3? Please riddle me this. For those of us who were grown up enough to remember that time, I'm a youngin', so I was like 2. I can't really speak to that time. But right, anybody who's adult, who was grown,
I literally can't think of anything
that's the same size and quality as that it was $2 in 1990, and the same price.
It does not guarantee your minimum wage per pay period, because we already addressed the fact that
if
you're not scheduled the same amount of days, you're not going to get any type of amount of money. You are not a full-time, or even you're not a real employee. Like,
the real point is that if I give you 6 hours of my time on Monday and my tips were $10, and then I give you 5 hours of my time on Friday, my tips are $200. It tips it up from yes, those tips all equal out to a week of $210 in tips. Just say those are the only 2 shifts that I worked during that week. But that doesn't mean that during that shift earlier that week on Monday, where I was there for 6 hours and only made $10, that the tips that I made then should be used to pay the wages, the back wages from Monday. And that's the way the current system works. That's the way it works. Mm-hmm. And that's what's wrong. Yeah, I'm giving you 6 hours and be paid by the establishment, because we also know, we've all worked in restaurants. If you're working a 6-hour shift that's slow, you know you're doing stuff at that restaurant. You're over here polishing things that never been polished. You're looking at the light fixtures. You're dusting off old things from the back.
Fixing toilets.
Literally just doing anything and everything to not be still. Because if you're still, you're getting sent home. They're like, well, fine, I'll just take your table because you're doing nothing. And they give you all this attitude. So we know, even when it's slow, I mean, I can't even tell you the multitude. I didn't even realize it was a weird thing until I tried to work for a coffee shop and literally was fired because you do too much and you're making everybody else really nervous, because every time it's slow, you're always over here polishing floors, polishing this, restocking this and restocking that, and everybody else just sitting around sipping coffee, and you're running around. It's like, because I just came from a restaurant. In a restaurant, I'm not allowed to sit around. So yeah, I polished the coffee cups, because the coffee cups would say, well, usually we polish them before. You know, like, all of this was like, why are you doing so much? Because I came from a restaurant where massa gonna kill me if I drink water.
You can't even get a restroom break
You get, if you drink too much water, they get mad at you for drinking too much water and then going to the bathroom too much.
Goodness.
You can't drink because you go to the bathroom too much. You can't go to the bathroom too much. Like
Make a trip to IHOP Chevelle and tip them extra
Please,
dope.
go to the Denny's on Benning Road, by where I live, and give them
Denny's.
sisters anything more than $1, because people coming in there with the ARP card and every veteran VA discount they can try to get to knock
shout
a
out
ground
to all
slam.
the servers and all the bartenders that overtip. I know we have that in common. Luca, Lauren,
everybody at
Jennifer,
Clyde, who makes good
Chevelle.
money.
I know y'all some over tippers because y'all love that tip life. If there's one good thing about being in this bartending serving world,
It was nice.
Restaurant workers.
You don't have to wait 2 weeks to get your
Restaurant
money.
Workers United.
Ladies,
we will always be united on that.
I do want to. We could talk all night about this because we're passionate. We all have our stories, but I'm
just loving these comments.
I do want to wrap up this conversation and leave us on this truth. Okay, throughout the course of American history, there have been battle after battle after battle to improve workers' wages and workers' rights.
Oh, yes.
And it does not matter at what point in history you look at. There was always a ruling class or a business class that opposed any kind of changes based on the exact same arguments that folks have brought up in our chat room today. But through every single one of those improvements to where we are today, business has succeeded. The restaurant industry has grown and lived. And so whether Initiative 77 passes on June 19th or not, the restaurant industry is going to continue and it is going to thrive. Believe in yourselves. Believe in that. I'm excited to keep eating, and I believe in us as a people that we're going to change together and we're going to grow together.
Yep.
So let's think of positive ways to improve all of our lives collectively and take care of ourselves. I want to thank you, Jessica, for educating our viewers about Initiative 77, about the work of Rock United, and just sharing about your personal experiences.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you all.
Are we going to continue this next week? We have like so many questions, so much engagement.
We can continue this next week. Yes, we will continue this conversation. And the other thing we'll continue to talk about is just the dump Trump slate and everything that our folks represent and why we're running as restaurant workers, as organizers, as advocates for people to have a better life and affordability within this city, because we're trying to stay in the city. So we will continue this conversation. And this show is on live on the Facebook page that you might be watching. It's running constantly at the live.OneLove Massive site. There's a whole tab for the MNM show where you can watch the MNM show 24/7 if you want. Please continue to comment in the comment fields, and we will talk about these questions and bring them up again next show. But from here throughout June 19th, we're going to be talking about local political issues, trying to raise awareness, get people's brain juices flowing, and again, encourage people to vote, because the DC primary decides who's in office and what initiatives are going to pass. The DC primary, not the November election.
Nope.
The DC primary in June is our election.
Can vote on Prop 77 regardless of how you're registered to vote. So as long as you're registered to vote, come out.
Come
vote.
out.
And for those of you out here who do support this,
Yep.
I know sometimes people, the people out here who are paid, not every one of them, but a lot of them are paid, vested interests, can be very dogmatic and rude. I mean, I hate to call people names, but they're very fierce. They're passionate. But do know that we need your support. Call into your council members. Call into the at-large council members. Call up into your chair, Phil Mendelson. Call in, let them know, listen, we know this is a campaign. They say you're going to lose your tips. They're not going to lose tips. We support this. We support this. Call in. Come to Florida Avenue Grill, where the blue door right aside, above the longest running, the nation's longest running black-owned restaurant, the Florida Avenue Grill institution here in the district. We're great good friends with the owner, Emar Hutchins, one of the owners who supports us in what we're doing, who does the best to treat his workers right and pay one fair wage. The little blue door right to the left, come upstairs, give us a knock. We're there probably still right now. And then just good education. Just get the education. We have the data. We have the facts. We have the research. Opposition, you guys have 3 tasks. 1, show me the clip of what I said, because I know what I said. I said what I said. But if you think I said something different, show me the clip. So task 3, send us the whole video, that entire day. Jessica at rockunited.org. Diana at rockunited.org. Candace with an A, not an I. Candace at rockunited.org. Send us that full video. And number 3, since you guys are out here with all these things to say, please show us some facts. We've got the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We've got the Department of Labor. We've got the Department of Employment Services here in D.C. We've got facts that the Department of Employment Services has shown.
And that's a feat.
And they've published their own research.
That's impressive.
So I implore upon you, upon a half dozen other organizations, show us the facts. Show us real information. Challenge, come. We're here. We came out once. You want to invite us out to their debate? We'll come to their debate. I will ask you guys to please keep it civil, keep it classy, and like the Pulitzer Prize winner Kendrick Lamar said, you ain't gonna take me out of element, but if I gotta smack you around with my words, just make it look sexy.
We got 208 comments and 20 shares.
Wow.
This broadcast. I want to give a shout out to Jennifer Afra. That's Jennifer Schallenberg. Who else we got up in here? Chevelle Simone, Joseph Robert Basia, Luca Schoenberg, Laura. Laura, man, can you spell it phonetically in the comments? Because I believe in pronouncing people's names
Jessica,
right. You got a lot of consonants and not that many vowels.
Is there another public forum coming up that people would have the opportunity to attend and hear more about this?
One place I recommend people to go to in general is like in Rock. We are hosting days where we're doing information sessions on our own. Tuesdays at our office. That's every Tuesday, usually around 1 to 2 p.m. That's 1100 Florida Avenue. As far as forums, we just had our last one yesterday. So if you guys missed that one at Midlands, we're open to organizing more. So I mean, we've tried to work with quote unquote with our opposing forces to see can we work together. But it's okay. We're here. If you guys have an event, you're hosting an event, let us know. We'll let you ladies know so you can let people know. We're here. We're open. 1100 Florida Avenue. If you guys want to come and get facts, if you have questions, you have concerns, you have all these comments, you're very passionate people, and trust and believe that we are here because we care and because we actually want a good thing to happen. Because I grew up with this, so this is like talking about like my Christmas, talking about like my annual vacation we got to have because we had one for wage. I got to go to Australia, got to go to Netherlands, and then we went to Texas where we didn't have one for wage. I got to sit on the couch. And I got to eat peanut butter and jelly, and I got to watch cable, and then talking about all these benefits. I did not get to go to my aunt's funeral because only one of us could afford to take time off, and I had to actually work extra shifts.
You don't get time off. You're on call. You see
what I'm saying? So I'm coming at this from a standpoint of I am dealing with this. I do know the economic issues, but you guys have questions. I hope we can get some more forums, more opportunities. I like if we could be civil. We just had an ANC earlier today with some brothers, and please be civil, brothers. Please just answer the question that's been asked, and then just do that, and just try to be fair. And if you have 10 minutes, because we like to be polite and just give 10 minutes. But speaking of time,
we got to wrap it up.
I want to thank you, everybody, for giving me this space and this platform. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. And J Mills, are you ready for a metaphysical moment?
I guess I am. I'm never ready.
But born ready.
Right. So this is it. We're
Bring us home. Bring us home, sister.
Okay.
As best you can.
Right? So shout outs to One Love Massive. Shout outs to my metaphysical moment. Shout outs to being metaphysical meals at the moment. Shout outs to just having this ending for this podcast every week. I kind of want to go back and can I make a compilation of metaphysical mass?
Yeah, we can do that.
Message mashup.
When I go on my baby break, we're going to be doing that.
Okay.
And just playing it. over
Word
and
up.
over again, putting the love and the wisdom nuggets out there.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
So we always end metaphysically, and with all of this different talk, all of these different things that are happening, all the different issues that are going on, and we are being made aware of, I feel the need to pause and dwell on choice and the amazing ability that we have to choose as human beings, constantly, forever remaking who we are and forever having the choice to be whoever we choose to be. We need to focus on observing without judgment, being able to hear someone's perspective without losing control of ourselves, control of our emotions, recognizing every choice that we have to choose to be whoever we choose to want to be. Oftentimes, who you are can be blocked by how you feel. How you feel is not always who you are. And it's very interesting, depending on the type of person that you are, how these feelings can contradict with the character that you possess as you choose to be yourself. We are living in very interesting times where often we find ourselves having this removed conversation about humanity. When someone's humanity is argued about, the relevance of, the worth of these things, we have many triggers. We're living in a triggered time where all of your scars, we're in the information age where nothing is hidden. But you forever always have the choice of who you are and who you choose to be. You can be proactive with your emotions and decide in advance that you refuse to let anyone steal your joy. And when you are encountered with an energy that attempts to do so, you can laugh in its face. Ha ha ha. I see you trying to steal my joy, and I won't let you have it. Oh, you're mad? Oh, that's funny because I'm not. Oh, you're taking this personal? That's crazy because it's just a discussion about things. These things. You have a choice. You always have a choice. We always have a choice. And while we have all these different opinions and all these different feelings, we have to make sure that we take charge of the choice that we have to feel how we choose to feel. Choose love. Whatever side it is, whatever thing you're feeling, choose love. Choose love so that you have the patience to listen and the patience to deal, because nobody's mind will ever be changed when you start yelling at them, berating them, speaking from a condescending point of view, calling them out their name. It doesn't matter what you have to say, they will not hear it. Whatever you have to say, bring it in love, bring it in respect, bring it with patience, bring it with kindness, bring it with empathy and understanding. It doesn't matter what it is that you have to say and what it is that you are listening to. You have a choice in who you will be and what you will feel and how you will make other people feel. That's your choice. That's your choice. We have so many things that happen to us, so many things outside of our control. Honestly, anything that anyone else does has nothing to do with you. How somebody feels about you is none of your business. It has nothing to do with you. We involve our things unnecessarily, putting our emotions unnecessarily in things that have no relevance to us, truly. But we think they do. So we put these feelings, this energy, these distractions unnecessarily, when love is what we need. Love is the filter that you need to put everything through, whether it's information that's coming from you or information that's coming to you. These times that we are in this information age, when we have so many definitions that are wrapped up in identities, it can be an identity crisis when you are revealed that there's a huge misinformation. I understand. And with that understanding, it gives me the compassion to show love. See, there's a very interesting things that happen when you understand somebody. Understanding is the key to love. See, to know somebody is to love them because you understand them. How many people have a friend that's an asshole? You may be the asshole if you don't have an asshole friend. It's you. But for those of us who have a lovable asshole friend, you understand them, so you love them. If they were not your friend, if you did not understand them, somebody different that you did not know, you would not like if they did these things. But when you understand someone, you have the ability to understand why they do some things, and you don't hate it. We don't like what we don't understand. And we can't understand things if we are not listening. And you are not listening if you're coming from an emotional place. So we have to take care to remove our triggers, no matter what they may be, no matter what conversation you're having and how triggering it might be. I understand, because we're talking about humanity. We're talking about definitions of core values and things. And you got to think, for whatever conversation that you are having, however hard it is for your mind to be changed, that's how hard it is for somebody else's opinion to be changed. How many times are we talking to try and change somebody's mind instead of just talking to be understood? That's the point of communication. You want to speak to be understood. You want to listen so you understand. And that is how change happens. Mm-hmm. Understanding one another, respecting one another. Now comes compromise.
Yep.
But without that, we are in the state that we are now. Whatever
Divided.
topic it is that we're trying to address, we have people who are bringing it up angrily, calling the other people out of their name, calling them ignorant, calling them racist, calling them all types of names, calling them lazy, calling them. No, I'm not even talking about any this specifically. I'm saying, like, oftentimes with almost all of these different issues, when one side is trying to talk to the other, they're coming from a very angry and emotional
divisive
place, and it's immediately divisive and polarizing. And that other side, they're not even in a place to receive what is being said, because the emotions are coloring them blind. And they can't receive it, and the vice versa. When the energy that's being brought. So for all these different conversations and all these different things that we have, man, love and light is all that matters. You have a choice in how you choose to feel, and we have got to take control of that choice. Realize what you can control, and the only thing that you can control is yourself. Take control of yourself. In every moment, choose love, choose joy as often as you can, because things will happen to you that can temporarily maybe shake you for just a moment. And in that moment, you can choose not to be angry, not to be hurt, not to be triggered. You can choose to be peaceful. You can choose to be kind. You can choose to be caring. Because there's a moment of indecision that happens when this trigger is pulled. What happens is you say these words to yourself in some variation or degree. Excuse my French, but you find yourself like, who the fuck you think you talking to? Then that pause right there. Laugh. It's all right. You don't know me. I'm going to choose joy. I'm going to choose love. You got me messed up, and that's okay. It's all right. We haven't met each other yet. You don't know who I am. That's cool. You got me mistaken, and that's okay. Everybody doesn't know me. Who am I that everybody would know who I am? Who am I that everybody would love me? Name somebody divine that has walked this earth, somebody great that did really great positive things like nonviolence, like Martin Luther King, or like, Gandhi or Jesus Christ. What happened to them? How good are you? So we're not going to talk about good people and what should happen to good people and how people treat the people that are so good. You'll notice a pattern with them. Choose love, no matter what, though. Just remember, you're not that good. And when the hate starts coming, you start wondering why. Just remember, hey, Gandhi got hated on. MLK was violently murdered. So who are you? What path you on? How good are you? Choose love. Choose light. One love. Because you got a choice. No matter what. Be the light you want to see. Whatever you have to say, drip it, drop it, marinate it in love.
Yes.
That's my message.
Thank you, J. Mills, once again, for that metaphysical moment. And thank you again to Jessica Wynter Martin for joining us on our show, engaging us in this really important conversation. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, left comments. Again, vote June 19th. I want to thank everyone at the amazing One Love Massive Studios. Mike and Nick, y'all are awesome. We love you. Thank you for the lights, for the sound, for the cameras. And thank you, Molly, for hosting us again. We love One Love Massive.
Yep.
And make sure you turn out to the Funk Parade this weekend. It's going to be litty. It's going to be awesome. And it's expanding this year. So feel the love. Focus on the love that J. Mills was talking about at the Funk Parade. And we will see y'all next Tuesday, and we will continue this conversation and many other conversation about unions and workers' rights, etc. And we're going to get elevated as per usual. So peace out.
I think we made some positive
some love.
things. Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
Some love. Next
All
week.
right.
Whoop, whoop. Like 200.